Hi, this is Kyle Golick of the Smacking Off the podcast. I'm an asshole. You want to know how much of an asshole I am? It's raining here at Robert Morris Arena here in Pittsburgh, and my ass decided to bring Dr. Balls to the site of where Kentucky had their most embarrassing defeat. You won't be embarrassed if you're watching Smacking Off the podcast with Dr. Balls.
Dr. Balls is a presentation of Smacking Off the podcast.
Dr. Balls, the state of college hoops.
Can I ask a question? When Auburn plays basketball, do you pray to Jesus, or is that off the table with Bruce Pearl there? Because he was baptizing players last time I heard, and so I'm kind of confused about which way to go there. I just want to make sure in this new day and age that we don't offend anybody.
Well, he may have gotten saved because I think they just had a come to Jesus moment on the sideline before they cut to the refs here,
But you sure that was Jesus, though?
It might have been Jehovah, though. I mean, we all love Jehovah.
I'm sure Jesus Christ's name may have been uttered at least once or twice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Potentially in vain, but we'll let the viewing audience figure that out.
Probably so. Bruce Pearl has a salty mouth when provoked.
Yeah, but we can have forgiveness. That's the beauty of it,
True.
We can ask forgiveness.
Amen.
And
Amen.
then we can get baptized on the campus University of Auburn, But there's one player from Alabama here in this game that's been baptized in 3 of over the last about 8 minutes.
Oh, he's shooting the lights out.
They ain't got nothing for him. And then now Sears is eating them alive. They had his number early on. But I think the problem with Auburn is that KD Johnson's been running his mouth for 3 years, and people just hate this motherfucker, man. Am I the only one that hates KD Johnson?
I think hate is a strong word. I think a lot of people don't particularly care for him. Hate, I think, is strong, but I think a lot of people, like we talked about for the Rose Bowl game, a lot of people are rooting for Alabama tonight. I'll just say that.
Oh, yeah. And if you're a player out there, and he's been in the league 3 years, and you faced this guy already, I mean, you're telling everybody that ain't facing that. Look at this guy. He's an asshole. He's going to run his mouth. I want you to put your body in him. Every chance you get, you better rub him. You better hard pick him. Anything you can do to let him know you're there, because he's an asshole and he's going to run his mouth. And he's got that reputation in the league, and there's people that savor the day that they got to play this loudmouth motherfucker. That's the thing I'll say about it.
That goes back to you watched Survive and Advance, the story of the 83 Wolfpack, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the quote that was great from Roy Williams was, that's back when guys stayed their full 4 years, in college. And you'd see this guy as a freshman. Then you'd see him as a sophomore. By the time you saw him as a senior, you're tired of seeing this guy. You hate him. You know what his cologne is. You know what he had for lunch. You're tired of it. I just want to get rid of this guy. So I think he's got a little bit of that in him.
Oh, yeah, I like it. There's times that I do like that. I mean, Kentucky had a guy like that named Rick Roby, and his sole purpose in life was to be a goon. He later on played for the Celtics.
Goon it up, be the biggest, like the largest mosquito on the basketball court. I can't stop buzzing you.
Yeah, he was a big old lurch of a motherfucker too. But speaking of Kentucky had a horrible loss against South Carolina.
I was just going to ask you, Bob, when we were going to discuss that. So let's get into it.
We were probably going to discuss that at length this evening, because the whole nation is right now, and also Calipari's future at Kentucky. Boy, those Kentucky fans are upset, right, Bob?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of people who's been wanting him gone for a while, and they were giving him a break because this year he was coaching in a manner where he let guys go and actually play, right? But they're not very experienced, and they got out of control. They didn't play defense, and it's ironic that Kyle Golick took me to the location, right, of the most horrible defeat in Kentucky's history at Robert Morris University just last night while Kentucky was losing. Now how ironic is that? So,
That had to sting just a bit.
oh yeah,
I think the issue clearly last night was on the defensive side of the ball for Kentucky, and I'll be frank, during his tenure, both in the NBA and in college basketball, Calipari's never been big on coaching defense, in my opinion. I think he relies on the fact that, for most of the time, his teams just out talent the other teams. It certainly didn't work, or was the case in the NBA, but at Kentucky, for most of his tenure, he has the advantage of the just better athletes around the court than the other teams, and just he sort of has an expectation or an assumption that, well, I have the better players, they're going to be better than the other guys at defense, and I don't really need to kind of coach that. And that came back to bite them clearly in the butt last night. Far too many open looks for three, and South Carolina wasn't afraid to take those shots, and they were burying them.
well, see, they were like you said, they weren't disciplined at all on defense, and they didn't show any sense of urgency on getting out of the shooters. And we discussed on the last Dr. Ball segment that one of the recovery is one of the aspects of defense.
Absolutely.
All right.
Real quick, guys. Score update: Alabama's leading 44-30 now.
Oh, they just took control right here at the end of the first half. I watched that.
That's good, but 20 more minutes.
Yeah, there's a lot of time to go for Alabama for sure.
Finish the job, but so far it's looking. I'm watching. It's looking great for Alabama right now, and it's nice to see. As I've watched a number of Alabama games, it's nice to see on one of the weeknight games. The stadium is alive. The crowd is into it. They're being loud. They're being noisy. Lately I've only seen that on the games on the weekends. So.
Well, and to be fair though, this is Alabama and Auburn. That is a spicy.
True. I mean, certainly the opponent makes the difference.
Look at the people standing, man. If you're watching the game,
they're all standing. They're into it. That's
we're also talking about a ranked Auburn team. I mean, this is a big game.
Yeah, no, this is huge, and this would give Auburn their first conference. Nice steal. Oh, finish. Yeah.
We almost got it.
I think if Auburn, there would be no unbeaten teams left in the SEC. Bob, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right. Auburn's the last unbeaten in the SEC. They're 16-2 and 5-0 in conference, and I mean that's impressive at this point of the season. And
this would put Alabama back into a tie for first in the SEC with a win. So this is a huge game. And so far the Tide have played their tails off. I hope they saved enough juice for the second half, but I expect Coach Oates to give them a good pep talk. And then after this is an interesting game following it. Arkansas, man, the must bus is broken down. The wheels have fallen off, and they got a tough challenge with a very good Ole Miss team. So we got a doubleheader tonight of great basketball. Let's get back to South Carolina.
I want to keep this in reverse for a second. Yeah, let's talk about Kentucky for half a second, because one of the things that we're talking about is lack of discipline. Do you think that might have something to do with one of the main gripes for most of the Kentucky fans right now about these one and done star players breezing through on their way to the NBA?
Well, the one and done is done, though.
Well, yeah, they could leave, and NIL is giving an incentive to stay. And at Kentucky, you can make NIL money playing basketball for sure, because you don't have 53 people competing for the money. And plus, I mean, everywhere you go, these guys are like little mini gods all over the state down in East Kentucky. And they're like, oh, he plays for Kentucky. Especially somebody like Reed Shepherd, who's from Kentucky and played for a mountain school. I mean, he's I bet, I don't know what his NIL deal is, but I bet you it's in the millions, right? And you're getting the whole region. You're getting all the way over into West Virginia, down into Tennessee, up into Ohio, right? I mean, everybody in Southern Ohio are big UK fans, in basketball. But here's Calipari's problem. So he let these guys loose to play because they are more talented, clearly, this year than they have been. and than most teams in the country, right? Only like Kansas and maybe a couple other teams. Close. UConn is close, but definitely Kansas might be the only team with the same talent level as Kentucky at this moment, right? Now, North Carolina is different because they've developed players and they've stayed. But as far as the overall where they were signed at, where they 5 stars, 4 stars, blue chips, whatever it was, Kentucky's undisputedly the most talented team in the country in terms of the recruiting rankings. So, and these guys can play, and he's led them, but they haven't been disciplined on defense. And it's historically took Calipari a long time to get teams ready. And the Kentucky fans lose patience with that year after year after year after year that these players aren't ready to February and March. Well, in the case of this team, I feel it's a slight aberration, the loss against South Carolina, but it's like a canary in a coal mine, and it's showing you how to beat Kentucky because they are undisciplined. And there's times when they don't give the effort they need on defense, right? Because otherwise you're just not going to run with these guys. They're going to outscore you on and on and on. And South Carolina did the right thing. They stayed up inside their guys, roughed them up, and they're young players. They're undisciplined, and they let them guys beat them.
I think that's very well said, Bob. I completely agree with you 100%. The other thing I took away from this game is let's not sleep on South Carolina. This team, man, now watching that tells me, they can play with anybody. They have the ability to play with anybody. Can they do it on the road? That's going to be, a question still to be answered. But at home in Columbia, with that crowd support, and that crowd was in it the whole game. And to Shannon's point, it depends on the opponent that shows up in your gym. But if they're getting that kind of support every game, it's going to be hard to win in Columbia. Now I got to catch the next Gamecock game where they go on the road to a quality opponent and see if this team can take that show on the road. But as far as athletic ability, talent, both on offense and defense, South Carolina should be able to play with anybody, and that bodes well for them. Should they make, and I think they will, they'll make the tournament come March. And I tell you what, regardless of whatever conference or whatever team, like I'll just throw an example out there for you. If I'm Purdue and it's, the second game of the first weekend, I don't want to see South Carolina in my bracket. I'll tell you that much. Because they're going to be like an 8 or a 9, maybe a 7, depending on how they could even get as good as a 6. And you see them in your bracket, that's a problem. I'll tell you, I don't want to see Creighton play South Carolina. That's for sure. That's going to be a mismatch for us.
Sean, just to break in real quick, you actually get your chance Tuesday, January 30th. South Carolina travels to Tennessee.
Now,
I was just looking through the schedule. I think that's the next good. Their next good.
That's the next one that really well. They have. They're going to host Missouri at home Saturday. So yeah, that's
but Mizzou is piss poor this year.
Yeah, they should handle that quite easily. But yeah, they've got a real test at Tennessee.
That game will be very exciting. I hope people watch that because that'll be very interesting. Tennessee, very difficult to beat at home, but they live and die by defense along with this young Dalton Connect who's been playing lights out. But I want to see them win when he has an off night because we all know every now and then a great player has an off night.
So Tennessee, I was getting ready to mention them. So now we've seen South Carolina, the way they played. They played Kentucky in a similar fashion to how Tennessee would, which was to body them up defensively and to limit the amount and accuracy of 3-pointers, right? So Tennessee wants you to take bad 2-pointers. So Tennessee could be a problem for Kentucky if they cause them to play undisciplined basketball. Now, do I believe that Kentucky has that as that Achilles heel they can't overcome? No, because they played North Carolina, who is an experienced team and can do the same things. And since they were up for that game, they beat North Carolina in a tough game.
Absolutely. And I to speak to Carolina, Bob, did you see that they're still unbeaten in the ACC, by the way?
Oh yeah, and
They haven't. I think they're 9-0 in conference, and they've got it rolling. So that just tells you how impressive the young Wildcat victory over that North Carolina squad was. And so, to your point, I agree. What Kentucky team shows up again because it's a young team, the motivated team that really basically handled North Carolina all game. I know the score was closer than it was, but for most of that game, I go, Kentucky's the better team. This is easy to see. Versus the undisciplined, youth is often undisciplined defensive performance they had last night. So that should concern you as a Kentucky fan when you get to the tournament because, one game you guys will destroy a team by 30, and then another game you're gonna be sweating bullets, sweating out a game real close.
Yeah, you're right about that. So they've got to work on that. They got to be more disciplined, and usually they get better by the time the NCC tournament. He's late to develop teams, but he has brought some teams around that weren't expected to do anything. But now they've got huge expectations because he's got players. There's really no excuse for.
And you got finally you got the NCAA to get off your case, and you got your guy Big Z back. So.
And he didn't do much in that game. Against South Carolina, so they must have watched the tape, Yeah. But I think he's going to do well. Now, back to North Carolina, Duke is still well ranked, and they just beat Louisville, who's not really a good team. But I don't think Shireman,
You mean Filipowski?
Yeah, but I'm talking about the coach at Duke.
Oh,
Shire, isn't it?
John Shire, yeah.
Yeah, John Shire. Anyway, I think he's a great assistant. I think he's a great recruiter, but I don't believe that he's going to be able to keep Duke at the same standard they was because it's difficult to replace one of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest coach that ever lived, right? So just like Alabama is moving to DeBoer, right, it's going to be a time of transition for Duke. I think
I don't expect. I don't think. I mean, other than the hardest of hardcore Dukies, I don't think any even. And I'm not a Duke fan by any means. But I don't think any Duke fan would tell you they expect John Shire over the course of 35 years to win. What Krzyzewski win 5 national championships?
Yeah, like 1,400 games or something.
I don't think that's the expectation for Shire.
Well, here's why that Duke can't rotate coaches in a manner that Kentucky and Kansas has, right, to maintain their standard. Is because Duke program never was great until successful, right? When they had Mike Gaminsky in the 70s, it was a pretty good team, and it was respectable and part of a tough ACC. But Duke's program.
So you're sort of projecting the instead of Duke continuing on like Kansas and Kentucky, you're going the other way. They're going to be like NC State after NC State lost Jimmy V, and who was the coach before Jimmy V? Wore the checkered
Frank. I used to know. I should know his name. It's Frank something or other. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Yeah, and then after those two, NC State hasn't been much of anything since. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No. In general, that's true. And so Duke is not wasn't about the program. It was about the coach.
Yeah, Krzyzewski was incredible. I mean,
right. So it's not a national brand only except for the fact that people hate them, right? So the fact that when you travel, So
I'm laughing because it's very true. Most people I talk to about Duke basketball, they're like the Yankees or the Cowboys. They know them and they hate them. They don't want them to win.
I mean, how many Duke cats do you see traveling?
Not many. No.
I mean, there are people, but they got ratings because people hate them, and that's because of the standard of excellence of Mike Krzyzewski, right? No matter what you say, he cheated or whatever, which he did get caught. Some lying, cheating was never, especially near the end of his tenure, giving people jobs. Who's got played for the Pelicans now? That was such a good
Zion Williamson.
He just got straight up red-handed caught, paying the parents on and on and on and on before NIL. And nothing was done about it, right?
Now, so I used NC State as an example. I'll throw another example to you, and I think it applies. And you could tell me if I'm wrong because you have a much longer history of the game of college basketball. But I would also argue that you're seeing that same problem with Indiana, who's also a blue blood. They haven't had a good coach in there since, Bob Knight left. They haven't really been relevant on the national scene or the NCAA tournament scene in quite a bit.
One of the reasons for that is that they didn't have patience with Mike Davis, right? And Mike Davis was a hardcore disciplinarian in the mold of Bobby Knight, and I thought he was a great coach. He took a team of 3-stars to the national championship game, but he just couldn't recruit players because he was a disciplinarian and they knew it.
Yeah,
And,
no, I completely agree with that. I think Mike Davis got too short of a leash there at Indiana. I think if they'd given him more time, I think he would have been very successful there.
Oh, absolutely. Then they got Sampson, and he was just basically straight out caught and cheating, but that was an honest attempt because Sampson is a great coach. Kelvin Sampson is a great coach, but he's also a great cheater, and he's been caught over and over again.
Well, you could say the same thing about the Kansas head coach.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, obviously they're willing to put up with that, And even Calipari was implicated in all kinds of stuff that went on at Memphis, even though he's been seen as being clean at Kentucky. But I believe it's a dirty game. There's so much money involved, right? And this is the part that the college football guys don't get, right? So here's the part of the money that college football doesn't get. And while it is true that college football sells tons of merchandise, right? Teams like Kentucky and Kansas also sell tons of merchandise to do their college basketball. But what you're not getting is shoe sales out of college football. I'm not looking at you wearing a pair of Nike Sharks, and I'm not running to the store and buying Nike Sharks. Right.
Basketball shoes are what most people wear, not football cleats.
Right. So
and I would also agree with you that when we talk major college football, that's was the Power Five. Now it's going to be the Power Four, and I'll even throw a slight bone at the group of 5 that's still hanging around. But so you're talking 9 conferences. We got 32 conferences in major college basketball. And many of those programs don't have a football team. So all that alumni and fan dollar goes directly to basketball. And I know basketball doesn't measure up total because of the TV money to football. That's really where football makes its money, is the TV. But to your point, you're absolutely right. There's plenty of great universities and colleges that don't have football, and their fans, the money they spend on jerseys and T-shirts and etc. are for the basketball program. And I would argue that your Kansas and your Kentucky fans probably spend more on basketball stuff than they do football stuff.
Oh yeah, you can wear them for both. And then to the shoes, you got the shoe company in a way is corrupted the game because they're throwing so much money at it because they want these young stars to wear these shoes and they want schools to wear the shoes, right? So Nike, for example, Kentucky was an Adidas program at one time. Then they were a Nike Elite program, which I love those jerseys, by the way. The original Nike Elite jerseys from the early 2000s, I think, were classic. Those
were great. I remember those. Those were great. I love those jerseys.
Oh, I do too.
I like the Kentucky jerseys that have the checkerboard down the sides.
Let's see if we know anything about them. Let me see what I can break out here.
Bob's going into. Oh no, he's going in the closet.
The closet. I'm on the road. I'm in my hotel.
Oh, nice. Well, you even brought it with. Oh, very nice. Yeah, very nice.
Let's see.
Very nice.
No, these ain't got the checkerboards, but I do have those, right?
But I'm mad at Nike. So Creighton's a Nike school as well. Yeah. But I'm mad at them right now. And those are lovely shorts, by the way.
I got shoes too.
But I'm mad at either Creighton or Nike. I think it's Nike though. And Kentucky's a Nike school, so you might have the same issue. The players that are on the bench, right, are wearing those zip up it's a full zip hoodie sweatshirt, and it on the back it says Creighton kind of in a half arc.
Yeah.
And the players are wearing those it's a TV timeout and they huddle up, and the guys that are on the bench are wearing these full zip hoodie sweatshirts, and on the front up left it's got just the small Creighton logo, but on the back in white letters real big it says Creighton in an arc. And I go, man, if they would sell those at the Creighton bookstore website, I don't care what the price is, I'm buying one of those. And I go on the website, They don't have it. They
Damn.
don't have it. I'm thinking it's just, and this happens in football. Some of the things that the players have on the sidelines or the coaches have on the sidelines are not available to the general public. And I go, why not? You got fans that would be willing to pay top dollar for this stuff, and you're not making it available.
Yeah.
It's a bummer, and especially finding in this day and age, because it's kind of gone out of fashion, is the full zip sweatshirt. And they always want to push on you the pullover sweatshirt.
We want to zip up.
I want that zipper. I want that full zipper. Yeah. So
Where AR is on this side of the zipper and MY is on this side, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Best sweatshirt in history, right?
Yeah. Or in the other sweatshirt that's gone out of style. From when I was a kid, and I think when you were a younger adult, was just the crew neck sweatshirt, no hood. I don't need a hood. Just give me the crew neck.
Yeah, I like them
because then I could wear a collared shirt underneath it.
Makes you think of Lou Holtz, right?
Oh yeah. The Holtz would wear like a white dress shirt, and then he put that pullover crew neck with no hood. Yeah. Man, that was a clean look. It was a real clean look.
Yeah, it was.
So I think Nike needs to up their game for us, the fans, and make more of this stuff available. But
absolutely.
I got another game we need to talk about, Bob. That occurred. I know you were focused on your Kentucky Wildcats, but another one of our Dr. Ball segments predictions sort of came true last night. Oh. We already had the win with Kansas State last week, so we were right about Kansas State. The other one that came true last night was we surmised that Oklahoma was a little bit of a fraudulent program, particularly they were ranked 11th. Texas, unranked Texas. Now, I know it's a rivalry game. It is a rivalry game.
I watched for that game.
Texas went into Norman and basically dominated them. 75-60. That's a double-digit win.
Yeah.
On the road against your arch rival. Thoughts on Porter Moser and what's going wrong right now with the Sooners?
I think they got smacked in the face and they hadn't responded well to it. That they believed that they were just going to steamroll them, and they come to their house, they smacked them in the face early, and they didn't have a response. They need to man up, and they need to. Really, it's about responsibility on defense for Oklahoma. So therefore, it's obvious that the teams that they've been playing to this point, right, that they were able to. If you lost your guy, either it was okay to let him go because you had the lead, or your guy would get help. But you couldn't leave your guy against Texas to help somebody else because it was Dunkarama, they were out and just playing them. So they didn't really have any good assignments or discipline on defense. And then
they were very lackadaisical on defense. I would agree with you completely. And the other thing I noticed, they let Texas control the game in the paint. Yeah. Texas was dominant especially in the low block.
More physical, and they didn't choose when to. So when Texas would screen them, they weren't screening to get threes. They were screening to get somebody to roll to the rim. And Oklahoma wasn't making the right choices. They were trying to go over top a lot of those screens to prevent the three, and then it was Dunkarama inside for Texas.
Absolutely, great analysis, Bob. I couldn't agree more. I think they were too caught up in the fact that their own team on off, they look to shoot the three. Oklahoma does. Texas doesn't want to shoot. They want to go inside on you, and they got the big guys on as forwards in the center that can do that. So if I'm Oklahoma, they should have prevented the roll to the rim, protected the inside, and made Texas shoot more from the outside. That would have been the adjustment I would have made.
Oh yeah, and another problem that exacerbated that was that Oklahoma would, when they shot from distance, that they weren't following their shots. They were just watching the ball leave their hands. They weren't following their own shots. They're obviously not a good rebounding team against a physical team anyway. So since they weren't following their shots or leaving to go downfield on defense, they were just watching the ball. So they lost 2 or 3 seconds per play. That's an eternity on defense.
Yeah, Moser, he's gotten Oklahoma back to respectability. I think they're a little ahead of schedule. I thought the 11th ranking in the AP was too high. I have them more down in the 20, 21, 22 area. That's not to say I think Oklahoma will still make the tournament. Uh, I don't expect him to go very far in the tournament, but he's got Oklahoma back. That's what they hired him to do. Compared to
I agree.
where they were, which was mediocrity. Maybe an NIT appearance to now getting to the NCAA tournament. But the one thing over the last 2 weeks, and I laud my team's conference. I love the Big East. You're an SEC man. You laud the SEC, and those are both great leagues. But right now, I do firmly agree with the pundits on whether whatever ESPN or USA Today, or you name the sports source. I think the Big 12 right now is the best conference.
And that's why Oklahoma was ranked so highly, because they're in the Big 12, but they hadn't really faced a lot of Big 12 schools yet.
I mean, just to give you perspective, Kansas State and Texas are not ranked, and those are, to me, those are two very good basketball programs. They're good. I mean, they got good teams.
Absolutely. And then Houston.
That's where, but the problem with that is for the Big 12 is going to come Selection Sunday. I think some of those teams are going to be, their bubble's going to burst.
Well, it could happen because there's so many teams trying to get in, but also alternately, the Big 12 could get 2 number 1 seeds.
They very well might. They very well might. I mean, Houston is a top 5 team. Kansas, I think next week they're going to drop out of the top 5. It'll be a top 10 team. I think they'll go from 3 to probably 8 or 9, with their recent loss. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The early projections, the only one that I kind of think is set in stone, unless there are injuries, is UConn is going to be the number 1 in the East region.
I think so.
Yeah.
They're really good. And then the problem with Oklahoma and their seeding is, so they're going to start looking at quad 1 wins and top 50 wins and stuff like that. Their non-conference wasn't that good. So if they play mediocre in the Big 12 regular season and don't win the Big 12 tournament, they may even become a bubble team, though I think they will make the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, they what would be actually good for them, because again, this is, I think, Moser's second or third year. I'd have to go in and look from when he left Loyola. I think it's his third year. Obviously he had those great teams with Loyola, which it took him a number of years to build those teams, and they were very senior laden teams. He doesn't really have to do that at OU because obviously OU has significant more NIL support than Loyola does. But what might be good for them, because it's early in his tenure there, and I ultimately do think he will have success there, is them being a 12 or a 13 seed. Because then they have they're kind of sneaking around, and the expectations are low. If they were to get a high seed, I think the expectations for that young group that he's got there in Norman might be too much, and they would be susceptible to an upset, to a Vermont or a Drexel, or you name the mid-major that would love to upset a big brand name like
Dayton,
Oklahoma
or Eastern Kentucky.
Eastern Kentucky, absolutely. They're still leading that conference, Bob. They're still leading.
We like it. And I think they play Morehead State here in the next couple of months. That even reminded me of that. She goes, the Eastern's getting ready to play Morehead State. I'm like, oh, really? I said, should we go to that? I said, let's go to the one at Morehead since you're an alumni.
So what I'm going to do, because I'm just like you. I'm a road warrior this week. I'm out of town on business. But when I get back over the weekend, what I'm going to do for our next show, I'm going to look at each of the conferences, and because we know you got 32 teams that are automatic qualifiers, and I'm going to look at the mid-major conferences, not the power conferences, and I'm going to build lists of who we think is the probables that are going to come out of those conferences, barring, of course, you and I know that, like, for example, a Murray State can go like unbeaten all year. They're 30-2. They get into that conference tournament title game, and then at the buzzer, one of those unknown conference opponents of theirs upsets them, and now it's you know.
Support Smacking Off by commenting on, liking, and sharing our videos. Stay right where you are, more Smacking Off is headed your way.
I just received a marketing plan from a freelancer on Fiverr. It's great. And the way I'll present it will really take it to the next level. Check it out. Skills.
We're developing that with a freelancer and it's excellent. It's probably my feedback that made it so good.
And do you know who came up with the idea to use Fiverr? Liam. And who hired Liam? Me. Just to be clear.
You are now watching or listening to Smacking Off the Podcast. If you love it, tell your friends about it. If you hate it, share it with your enemies.
It was just a small gift from Mummy and Daddy. One, however, that would spark a bit of an obsession. It started out innocent enough, as these things always do, but quickly lit the fuse to something bigger. Mum and Dad encouraged other activities, but alas, had to sell things almost as fast as they bought them. Friends and family thought it was cute. It's just a bit of fun, they said. It's just a phase, they said. Well, it's all fun and games until your child is 34, still lives at home, and absolutely nothing has changed. These things should really come with a warning label. Buy, sell, eBay.
So I'm going to build that list, and we're going to talk about it on our next show. What was another one that real quick, did you see DePaul fired their head coach? You see that?
No, I've seen it vaguely go across the bottom line, but I don't know any details about it. I find it interesting.
So to me, as someone, who's intimate with the program, being from Chicago and obviously being a fan of a Big East program, what it signifies to me is that DePaul still wants to be competitive in college basketball. The question I have regarding this, because this is like coach 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 since Joey Meyer was there, and rest in peace to Joey Meyer. He just passed away very recently. He was the son of Ray Meyer.
Fans of both Ray and Joey. I thought they were great coaches.
They were great coaches, and kind of put DePaul, when they were coaching, on the national scene. But since those two have left, DePaul has fallen off, and they've blundered the head coaching position with a lot of bad hires. This search for a head coach, they have an interim in there right now, but in the offseason, if they want to be competitive, if they want to spend the money, and get they certainly can be, simply because of where they're located. I mean, as you and I have talked about, the Chicago Public League, along with the Chicago Catholic League, have a lot of good players, and they're not all going to Illinois or Northwestern or Purdue.
Oh no, they're going to Kentucky.
Some are certainly. If Kentucky calls, you're going to answer that question. But
but they could be going to DePaul. I mean,
they could be right. They could be going to DePaul, and even some of the 3 stars, will go to Loyola and not DePaul, because Loyola even recently has had more success. And I'll tell you a fun fact. The only school in the state of Illinois that has ever won the NCAA tournament, Bob, do you know who it is?
I guess it would be Loyola.
It's Loyola, 63. Yeah.
I was going to say that they seem to have won that like in the early 60s. I knew they'd won one because I was looking at the stats. So I've got to think bigbluehistory.com. That's a website that looks old school.
Yeah.
But it's full of stats, right? And good ones you can count on. And and I actually saw that because it listed all the championships, who won each year and how and all that. So if Loyola can win it, then they can win it now because the same circumstances exist. The only difference is the money is above the table. If you're in Chicago and you want to see DePaul win, and you have influence with the administration there, you say, hey, man, we really want to, we're alumni. We really want to see DePaul win, and we know it can happen because we're from here. We watch the Myers, and we know what recruiting's here. So what are you going to do? If they make that decision, they may even be able to mine former players or NBA greats from the region, right, to come there to DePaul. Somebody, what I would do if I was them is I would look at the Bulls, and I'd look at recently retired players that were still living in town that had a basketball mind. And I'd be looking for a situation similar to Penny Hardaway, to where I had a guy that was dynamic and could recruit, and that kids luckily would respect him because he played the game and they watched him.
What certainly hurt him today wasn't even college basketball news, because obviously DePaul just fired their head coach. They're going to have the interim probably for the remainder of the year, and then they're going to, begin their true search for their next head coach. But the bad news they got today is that the Milwaukee Bucks hired Doc Rivers, and I thought Doc Rivers would be a perfect choice.
Oh, he'd be a great choice because in college you have more control. See, he's got to mold in the NBA. You got to make grown men do what you want to do, right? And in college, they're more apt to follow the coaching.
Plus, Doc Rivers is from Chicago. He played in the Big East, not at DePaul. He went to Marquette, but he understands that league very well. I thought he would have been a great choice, but unfortunately, he's very much invested in the NBA, especially with the opportunity to coach Giannis.
What about Dwayne Wade?
And Dwayne Wade would be another very good choice.
That's what I would do, because for Dwayne Wade, it wouldn't really be about the money; it'd be about the fame. I think he's more reserved than Deion Sanders, but he's got a lot of swagger, and he can show you, right, why.
I think I completely agree with you. I think D Wade would be an absolutely perfect choice. And by the way, a quick side note to that 63 Loyola championship. Sister Jean was 44 years young when that happened. So she's been around. She was there for it.
She was there.
Now she's 104 and hoping the Ramblers can get back. But I completely agree with you. I think Dwayne Wade at DePaul, I think that would be awesome for them. He could create the buzz in the city of Chicago, and he's from Chicago. That could get those players that you're losing out to Kentucky, to an Indiana, to an Illinois. Even they've lost some recruits to Bradley, which is in the state.
Yeah.
You keep those kids in the city at DePaul, and DePaul's a great institution academically, but it has a great tradition in basketball. I'd love to see that program get back on its feet. They've been dormant now for we're talking almost 20 years.
It can be done. I really believe in it, that it can be done, and
it definitely can be done, because the simple nugget is, if Mark Few can make Gonzaga relevant, any program can become relevant. You know what I mean?
What if Mark Few were? So let's imagine we got Mark Few. He's recruiting, even though he may not be recruiting the same way that North Carolina does. He's recruiting at a level that is nationally high, even though he's at Gonzaga. So in my opinion, if you put him at DePaul, he's obviously got a system that can win ball games. If you put him at DePaul and he can just recruit Illinois and Northern Indiana, then I think it'd be a whole lot stronger than Gonzaga, and it'd be a foundation that could last.
Oh yeah, so he would be, if I'm DePaul, Dwayne Wade would be a call I make. Mark Few would be a call I make. Gosh, who else? The guy that's at Drexel right now, his name escapes me. I'd give him a call. As well as the guy that's at Florida Atlantic. I mean, Florida Atlantic nowhere. And for the
Didn't
last,
Larry Brown just retire from Florida Atlantic?
I'm not. I'd have to look. That's a good question, but let me
Yeah.
look. Let me look at who the current Florida Atlantic coach is.
I actually
Uh,
got games up looking at it here. Oh no, I'm on Texas Oklahoma, but he was the coach here for a while, and he didn't leave the cover bare. Of course, people could transfer it out.
so it's Dusty May is the head coach at Florida Atlantic. He's in his 6th year there,
Yeah.
but for the last 3 years, they've been at the top of their conference. They've made the NCAA tournament, and last year they ran it all the way to the Final Four. If you're DePaul, national championship right now might be out of the picture, but just making the NCAA tournament and maybe getting a Sweet 16 berth is something that is still feasible.
Oh yeah, and the market is great. No, because Chicago TV is different than a lot of other places TV. So especially in rural America, people have subscription accounts, or they have a satellite or something like that, and their local TV may or not be that great, and it's not really going to show any games other than maybe the CBS game of the week, or something, or ABC's game of the week, or something of that nature. But in Chicago, the local channels will play you DePaul, and you can watch them on the rabbit ears.
Absolutely.
Right.
But you got to have. I will. When it comes to Chicago and being born and raised in that area, the only teams that are given leeway to lose and they're still going to get watched are the Bears, the Cubs, the Bulls, and the Blackhawks.
Oh yeah, you have to win to get that support.
The other sports or the other teams, you better be producing, because I remember in the '90s when Joe Meyer was there. The Rosemont Horizon was rocking. DePaul had good teams. People showed up. They watched. As soon as DePaul got, where right now, I'll tell you, DePaul doesn't have a win in the Big East this year. Not one.
And they're playing Marquette right now. I'm sure that's not going to change.
And so nobody wants to watch a team get blown out by 20 points in their own building. That's I mean, you've never experienced that as a Kentucky fan. I have a little bit as a Creighton fan when we were in between the coach before Dana Altman came. We had some lean years back when we were in the old Missouri Valley Conference. But then Altman came and, he restored the glory in Omaha. And then after Altman left, now we have Coach Mack, who's doing a great job. But, for Chicagoans that are DePaul fans, it's been close to 25 years since they've really had anything to cheer about. And it's, I mean, you look at, if we look at a football program that's like that, until Chip Kelly got there at UCLA, there were some lean times. That Rose Bowl was looking pretty doggone empty for UCLA Bruin football.
Yeah.
And it still kind of is to this day, but, he's trying to get it back. And so I think it's tough for teams of programs that go on these long, when I say long, we're talking 15, 20-year droughts of no success. That tests the will of any fan.
It's just they got to do commitment and they got to make a splash. If that's what they want, they got to make a commitment and they got to make a coaching hire that makes a splash and gets people excited. And if they just win consistently and play well, the people, Chicago people will come around. And they will.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they got a brand new. And just to tell you the truth about that is they share the same arena in Chicago that the Chicago Sky, the WNBA team, shares. Well, the Sky just won the WNBA championship, and their games are packed. So it's the same building.
They still the Rosemont Horizon?
No. That's down. They're back. So the Wintrust Arena, which the DePaul men's and women's team plays at, and then during the WNBA season, the Chicago Sky play at, is I'd say it's a couple, maybe 6 blocks south of where Soldier Field is on Lake Michigan. On that. And it's by kind of the old McCormick place, if you remember that.
Yeah.
They built this Wintrust Arena. It's beautiful. It seats about 12,000. And, the Chicago Sky, the WNBA team, Candace Parker's there. They won the championship. Those games were packed. That is a packed house. Yeah. So it's not the location or the arena, because the location's fine. The arena's beautiful. It's new. you got to put a winning product on the court. You got to
I
have
agree.
hope. You got to have hope for the fans. If you don't, they're not going to give you that, $20, $25 to buy a ticket.
Yeah, you're right.
And
And but if people get excited, they'll come in droves. Now, something that happened recently. Kentucky wasn't the only team that had a bad loss. How about Kansas versus West Virginia?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, I agree. That was and good kudos to West Virginia. I mean, that team had a couple of opportunities in that game to say, we're gonna, fold up our tent and go home, and they just never did. They never quit. They never quit. I love that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you'd think that they would be in a little disarray after what happened with Coach Huggins, but no. I mean, they stuck together and had a little adversity, like you said, against Kansas and overcome it. And I was excited by that. I mean, and it puts teams like Kansas, Kentucky, they can't take other teams for granted because every game is your Super Bowl, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, when you're playing a blue blood basketball program, you're getting the other team's best shot.
Oh yeah, and the fans are going to show up. That's the big ticket. When you're looking at the schedule and you're buying your little mini season ticket package, you might not be able to afford the whole season package. You might buy like a group of 5 games. Where you're going to pick the Kansas game if you're a West Virginia fan, right?
Absolutely.
So they did good in that, but I really Kansas don't really have a whole lot of weaknesses. They've got a nice blend of youth and experience. They're power rebounders. They make decent decisions with the ball. Dickinson is one of the best players in the country, and so they're in the end. Kansas is going to be there where you love them or hate them, right?
There was nothing cooler though than them playing country roads after unranked West Virginia knocks off, a top 5 Kansas. That was, you could see in the crowd just the happiness and the excitement. That I felt. I was very, I don't have a dog in the fight other than I don't care for Kansas. That, so I'm always rooting for Kansas to lose. But to see the happiness of the West Virginia loyal fans going nuts after they had won that game, that's what makes college basketball special. And I was so happy for them. So happy for them.
I agree. Well, we've covered a lot. Let's talk about a few games, and then we might get out of here. So we talk about Arizona beat UCLA. I thought that was a decent win for them. That was a few days ago. Tulane beat Memphis. We just talked about them the other day.
Yeah, that was a big win for Tulane's program. Good for Tulane.
Absolutely. And Wisconsin beat Minnesota, but that's kind of a big rivalry game. You really can't take a whole lot from that.
It is, but I will say this. We were just talking about programs that right now are kind of a little bit down. I'll tell you, the air is out of Minnesota right now. I think they need a new coach. They need something to reinvigorate that program. Because right now it seems like Minnesota's just kind of they're just kind of there. There's no real vibe going with them.
And they've tried some major coaches. They've had Tubby Smith. They've had Rick Pitino Jr. I mean, they've tried to spend some money on coaches, and I think that Tubby Smith was just happy to be there. He just wanted to coach guys and play basketball, even though they had some success. But they haven't had none of them guys has really been a fireball. And it's hard to move the needle there.
Which is sad because I'll tell you what, I think it's officially known as Williams Arena, but everyone knows it by its nickname, the Barn.
Yeah,
that's a great arena to see a basketball game in up there in the Twin Cities.
Absolutely, it's historic.
It is very historic. And I don't want to hear that it's recruiting because their neighbor not too far down the road, Wisconsin, is having an incredible year. I think right now Wisconsin actually leads the Big Ten Conference. And they're basically they recruit in the same geographic area. So if Wisconsin can do it, there's no reason Minnesota can't. I would again, we go back to the discussion of you got to have the right head coach for the job. And to your point, they've misfired on some head coaching hires.
Yeah.
I
And
think
the,
I think Richard Pitino, that was a job that he was a little too young for at the time. I think he needed a little more seasoning. Now, and obviously they're not going to go back to him, but now I think he'd be ready for that job.
yeah, he probably would be. And then Iowa State is playing Kansas State right now. I think that's going to be a great game. But I'm with you on the recruiting. When Dr. Tom Davis was a coach at Iowa, he was able to recruit well and not compromise academic standards and things of that nature. Right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
for Minnesota, there's no reason that Minnesota can't do that as well. And they've tried to make a commitment. And like you said, they missed. But I don't think it's – I think that that's a team that could surprise people in the future by making the right commitment,
I mean, I'll give you another example that's having again for their team, their alumni, for their fans, that is having a great year. And we talk about academics. Northwestern is at the top, is in the top tier of the Big Ten right now. Now I don't know if they'll finish there, but right now Northwestern's having an exceptional year in basketball. You tell me another school other than the Ivy League that's tougher to get players into. I mean,
yeah.
but they're doing it. So, I don't want to hear that Minnesota can't recruit or can't find players. What they can't find is a good head coach that can build a good staff around him.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, they got great rivals. They have a great gym. Oh, that's a bad steal.
Oh, yeah.
Yikes! That was sloppy.
I see that too.
That's sloppiness right there. I've seen that in 12 turnovers.
The assistants are underrated in college basketball. Right?
Oh,
College
right.
football, we talk a lot about them.
You
But like
gotta
Rick
have
Pitino.
solid assistants. You are so right, Bob.
Oh, yeah. And Rick Pitino had Herb Sendek, the former NC State head coach, and Tubby Smith, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was his assistants, right? So if you look at Kentucky now, one of the reasons that players aren't getting developed in the same manner that Pitino had developed players is for two reasons. One is Calipari used to have Rod Strickland, which is one of the most unsung point guards that ever lived, right?
He was great with the San Antonio Spurs.
Oh, he was great with the Spurs. He was great with the Wizards. Strickland was a great ball handler, and he was a savvy street style player, right?
He was incredible. I love watching Rod Strickland.
So he was able to develop those guards that played for Calipari, both at Memphis and at Kentucky, and that's why you have John Walls and players of that nature, right? And Rose, right? Is because that Rod Strickland, even when has always been a part of helping develop those guards, and that's not really happening now. That's why they have transfer guards, and they're going for the number one players in the portal because the Orlando Antigua and the other assistants at Kentucky are recruiters, and I don't believe they're great basketball minds. So they're not really helping Calipari, and they're a yes man to Calipari. When they go up in the huddle, they're not saying, well, Cal, why don't you try this? They're nodding their heads like this right here, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it to me, it's one, first and foremost, you have to have a very good head coach, first and foremost. But then number two, because he can only do so much, he's only got so many hours in the day. He has to build a great staff to be, to be able to manage the whole program. It's very similar to, we talk about why Nick Saban was the GOAT. He was the CEO. He had a great staff, support staff, but he managed all of it. Now, some head coaches in college basketball, they'll get a great staff, but then they won't manage them, won't give them expectations, won't give them guidance, and they still fail. That happens. It certainly does happen. But when you can put all of that together, like when Pitino had Kentucky rolling in the 90s, obviously Bob Knight in the 80s. I would even give you Jay Wright with Villanova here in the last 10 years.
Yeah, he was a great coach, and he had great assistants.
So yeah, he would tell you, I have a great staff of assistants. I give them their sort of guidance, their left and right parameters, and then I let them do their thing. I don't micromanage them.
That's like Roy Williams had a great staff. It was a big help to him that Hubert Davis was on his staff because there's different roles for the assistant coaches, and one of them is, so you got the bench coach, and he's helping the coach the game, and he's tracking what players are doing and so forth, right? But the guy that's really important in college basketball, especially if you have a short time with them guys, is the other assistant, right? Who's, as the players come in, I'm talking to you, I'm saying, This was your role on defense. This was our concept, and this is what you were supposed to do there. Next time, try this. Next time, try that. Or your guys, he's taking you this way and that way, and this is the technique or the move you need to do to shake him, right? So those guys are
bad
on
pass.
bleep, right? So so you come in when you see me come off the floor. So they just blew the whistle. They send it sub for me. I come in. If I go by the head coach, he might say something smart ass to me if I fucked up bad enough, right?
Right. Yeah, you got to. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, not you don't have to be.
He ain't got much to say to you. Is the point, though, right?
Right. He'll know when you tell him.
Yeah,
like,
go over and sit down, Arthur. And then when I sit down, right, that's when the assistant, right, that works with people every day, just like in practice, he'll pull me off the side. You should have did this move. You should have seen this right here. And he'll come to me and he'll say, yeah, Arthur, Coach Calipari noticed that you didn't recover on your guy on defense, and you were confused about what you should have done.
I mean, let's talk about one of the greatest. Nice 3-ball. One of the greatest NBA dynasties, the '90s Bulls. Everyone talks about Phil Jackson. He was the head coach, certainly. But the two guys that were just as integral were his staff. You had Tex Winter and John Bach.
Yeah.
And they were really break down the X's and O's for the players, and that was the triangle offense of, hey, you need to be here when the ball is swung here. You need to move here. You missed that guy. You didn't screen. You didn't box out. That's why the staff is so, because they're going to spend more of the time with the players on a weekly basis than even the head coach.
So that's what's happening in Kentucky now. Is since they're so young, you have to do that a lot, right? So these guys are coming in and out of the game because you're running 10 deep now. The big Z is there, right? So as them guys are coming in and out, all those assistants are busy as hell, and then the graduate assistants will be behind them, and then they've got to get in those guys' ears, and then they've got to take that direction and move with it.
No, I completely agree. Well, Bob, it's getting late, and this Auburn-Alabama game is getting hot. So, closing thoughts for our midweek discussion and things we should look forward to for Sunday.
Well, I mean, just like our discussion tonight, we're seeing more and more about these teams and why they're good and why they're not, and why they'll win and why they're not. Right? And we've been discussing all night, so it's just basically unfolded, and people are starting to separate, and I'm liking that. Tonight, Marquette is crushing DePaul, by the way.
Yeah, we figured that.
But Northwestern's hanging with Illinois, who's number 10. I think Illinois.
I don't. The problem with being on the road, Bob, I don't have enough. I'm not in my house where I have 4 monitors, so I'm having to go between the Illinois Northwestern game and the Alabama Auburn game. And there's another one that I'm missing, which is the Kansas State Iowa State game. So
that's a good game tonight. Kansas State plays Houston. That's going to be my weekend game, right?
And my homework is I'm going to look at the mid-major conferences, and I'm going to build our list for each conference of teams we think have a chance to go to the tournament. And the reason that's important, not just for that team that will end up going to the tournament, but it has implications of if there's upsets, the big boys get knocked out because of those upsets. And Eastern Kentucky takes in Indiana out of the tournament, takes in Auburn out of the tournament, takes a Baylor out of the, just hypothetically, not realistic. But those mid-major conferences, when people go, oh, who cares about them? Who cares about the Patriot League? Well, you should, because if there's an upset, now that league's getting 2 teams in. That means 1 less for the Big East, the ACC, the SEC, et cetera, et cetera.
That's what it becomes special, is when the 1-bid leagues become 2-bid leagues, and then the bubble teams are scrambling. But they should have got her done during the season. They had their chance.
Absolutely. Or like you said, some of these big teams, they didn't schedule anybody in the non-conference, and, well, now they're paying the price. And their fans are going to be upset. But if they had paid attention, as you and I do, from November, remember, the season starts in November, not January. Those games in November and December mean something.
Oh, yeah. That's why Kansas and Kentucky and North Carolina are playing each other. They got the bragging rights of who is the greatest team of all time, and they know those are marquee games. They're going to get ratings even though it's early, right?
Oh,
They're going to be tested, and even if they lose, the committee says, well, I mean, North Carolina and Kentucky played each other. Kansas played North Carolina.
I watched all those games. They were great. They were great, especially that Kentucky North Carolina game. What a game! I hope they play every year.
I hope they get in the Final Four. That's what I'd like to see. Kentucky and North Carolina is a dream game for me in the Final Four.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I mean, to me, any of the blue bloods, but yeah, Kentucky North Carolina, you can't go wrong with that one. Can't go wrong.
All righty, yeah. So hey, Doug, we appreciate you, man.
Yeah, Doug, thanks for giving us the space. And
I mean, I just been listening and watching this damn game.
It's a fine game, isn't it?
Good game.
Right now it is, but Alabama's fucking around. But I mean, they're still holding on.
Oh my goodness, they're liable to throw down, Doug. But Alabama's showing toughness in this game. That bodes well. And even though their non-conference schedule against the top 50 was tough, they're well seasoned and they're still in the hunt for the SEC